Hello and welcome to Book Lust. I'm Nancy Pearl. My guest today at University Bookstore is author Brenda Peterson. Brenda, thank you so much for coming by today to talk. You've written many books and they've been both fiction and nonfiction, and I know you have some new stuff down the pipeline, as they say. Your newest book is I Want to Be Left Behind, which I was very moved by when I read. And it's partly a memoir, partly an environmental. It just brings together a lot of disparate things to make a whole. And will you talk about how you came to write it, what it was like writing about your family,
Yes.
all of those sorts of things?
I never thought I would write another memoir. I did a first memoir called Build Me an Ark, A Life with Animals. And a long time ago when I was working at the New Yorker, when in my 20s, I swore that I would never write first person because I thought it was narcissistic. And I was a great believer in the omniscient narrators. So to have written two memoirs is a bit of a lesson for me in never saying never.
Because when I read this book, I felt like I knew you, and we had met a few times before that, but I didn't feel I knew you until I read this book. And then I could hear your voice, or what I imagined was your voice coming through in the book.
That's lovely. I think I didn't know me until I wrote this book. Mary Lloyd Lawrence, this is her book, and she is a great editor in the tradition of great editors. And my agent, Sarah Jane Freeman, read every word of it. And at one point, there was a chapter about the inauguration that I went to, and she called up and said, "Sweetheart," from New York, and said, "Sweetheart, sit down. That chapter doesn't belong. It's too topical, and it won't last.
Right.
So let's take this out and just, you know." And I said, "I've got a deadline. I've got to create another chapter in a month." And she said, "You'll do it." And then she said this great thing. When you're writing, it's like meditating. You hear a train go by, you hear all these distractions, you hear the train, you don't get on the train. And she said, in some of these chapters, you got on the train, get off. One of the things that I loved writing the memoir is that I got to write from a child's point of view for almost 100 pages. And that, when you write from a child's point of view, you have access to things that you might have lost as an adult.
Right.
So one of the exercises I always give people who want to write is, tell me one scene that explains your whole life and set it in childhood. Because immediately I see these people who are shut down or kind of, you know, traumatized or whatever, they immediately blossom and they will have access. And you immediately have access to that creator who might have been killed along the way or been criticized to death.
Right.
So I love these images, and I think when adults read young adult, or when we write from a child's point of view, we are then redeeming ourselves and restoring our imaginations.
It used to be, I'm sure when you were in college and when I was in college, the big thing was to show, don't tell.
Right.
And now it seems as though it's switched to find your voice.
Yes.
Do you have a feeling about that?
Rachel McKenzie, who was the fiction editor at the New Yorker, who wrote Risk and who wrote The Wine of Astonishment as a nature writer, took me under her wing. I was the last writer that she discovered. And she discovered me at my going away party and said from the hospital where she was dying, "You are a writer." And like a churlish, callow chump, I kind of thought, well, I know that. And then she said, "I will edit your next book."
Oh.
And that's thousands of dollars, plus her editing. She edited Isaac Bashevis Singer, and she edited John Hersey and Ann Tyler, Peter. She discovered Philip Roth. And so she gave me that great gift. And she said to me two things that have stayed with me. One, she said, you will spend your life finding your voice, and you will have many voices. But by the end of your life, you will have found an integration of your voices. And at this point, I understand what she's talking about, because a lot, as I said, many of my books have different voices.
Right.
I think it is about finding your voice more than show, don't tell. Because if you read Henry James, he's not a shower. He's a teller.
Right.
Dickens is more of a shower.
Right.
But George Eliot, my great classic omniscient narrators whom I love and read, what is the waves? It's not exactly showing. So I don't pay as much attention to that as I do finding a storyteller's original voice. And when I find that, trying to get it free from all of the inner critics and all of the fears that really harm you when you're trying to find your voice.